What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the interweb? Before this video begins, I have two things to say. One, I'm going to start streaming on Twitch again, so as you can see, the Twitch is right here, or you can follow the link in the description below, twitch.tv/cruzando10. Number two, this video is not a news or a leak. This is news and leak mixed with my own personal theory and revelation that I had recently playing a certain game. So if you were clicking on this thinking it was some new leak or some new news, I would like to stop you. This is not like that. I just don't want to mislead you, so I thought I would tell you that uphand. But with that being said, let's look at Resident Evil 8 as a open world game. Resident Evil has always kind of been linear open world, but this generation with Resident Evil, things have been different. We saw Resident Evil 7 take a completely different change in the series. This is not a Resident Evil game. It does not play like Resident Evil. It does not feel like Resident Evil. It does not look like Resident Evil. But that's not a bad thing. Resident Evil has always been an ever-evolving series. Look at Resident Evil 1 all the way up to Resident Evil 2 Remake. You can look at them by era. Everything was different. Sometimes it was better, sometimes it was for worse. Most times it was for better. As we saw with Resident Evil, its identity is games like Resident Evil 4, 5, 6, and 2 Remake. That's how Resident Evil should play. It's how Resident Evil should always be. But that does not mean Capcom was at fault for trying to do different avenues for Resident Evil. They have always done that. Every survival horror game has to evolve in some way. As we saw with Silent Hill 4 The Room, it went into a linear open world, which is something Silent Hill had never done. That game had pretty much always controlled on like a straight path. You just keep moving forward. You find your way, you go. But Silent Hill 4 The Room switched that up. They gave you different directions. It let you kind of choose, even though each environment was pretty linear and things were dependent on how much you've progressed in the game. But look at the survival horror games of today. They are almost always open world games. Most recently with Days Gone, which is where I realized that, hey, Resident Evil could work in a style like Days Gone. What we know about Resident Evil 8 so far is that it's going to be put on an island. You are going to be tracking down more information on the people who made Evelyn. So that could be interesting. It could be something that's like not cool. It could be something that's, far more amazing than anything we could ever explain or just imagine as a whole. So there is quite a bit of stuff to be excited about for that. But imagine that island setting, having multiple islands or maybe just one big island. Everything's overran. You're supposed to be clearing it out. But there's a group of survival scientists that are left that did not die, and you have to help them reclaim the island. As you go along, they start opening up their labs, and they start showing you research. They start showing you how Evelyn was made, how things led to how it was, how things got bad, and how things just led up to Resident Evil 7. I think that could work. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's necessarily a phenomenal thing either. But I do think that would be the next evolution in Resident Evil, unless they stick with the Resident Evil 2 remake style, which we know they're not going back to first person, so we know games like Resident Evil 7 are not happening again. But we don't know what their gameplay are going to be like. We don't know what the next evolution in Resident Evil is. I see it being third person, open world. I mean, we know it's going to be third person, that's a given. But I see it being open world, like Days Gone. I see them bringing in a whole new trait of survival. Managing your food, managing your water, managing your weapons, managing everything. I think that would be really interesting. We see that a little bit in Resident Evil 2 Remake, as your knife can deteriorate. But what we don't see in Resident Evil 2 Remake is you being able to fix your knife or finding other weapons to use besides a knife. Maybe Resident Evil 8 is going to bring Dead Island to Resident Evil, or Days Gone to Resident Evil. I think that would be a very interesting take on the series. I don't know necessarily if that would be something that would be widely beloved by everybody, but I think that would be an interesting take on the series. I'm pretty sure that Resident Evil is going to have at least one more evolution before they just stick with the Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 2 remake style forever. I'm pretty sure they're going to have at least one more evolution. But what are the evolutions going to be? They've already had on-rail shooters. They've already had first person several times. It doesn't work. They've had visual novels. They've had board games. They've had several different nominations for Resident Evil evolutions, but they always end up coming back to what works. Third person survival horror at its very definition. and the direction survival horror is going in now, Resident Evil 8 as a open world game would definitely work, and I don't think anybody would be against it. I don't think anybody would be upset. I don't think anybody would be sad. I mean, think about it. One long 30 to 50 hour story for Resident Evil 8 with tons of stuff to do, tons of exploration. That is kind of what we want in a Resident Evil Saga style game. I don't exactly want to ramble too long, but in total, I do think Resident Evil 8 could potentially evolve into a third-person open world adventure that is not linear. I mean, think about this. We saw Resident Evil Revelations 2 being an open world linear game, but if it had been a full-on open world game, it could have been much more enjoyable. It could have been a very cool place to explore. And I think Resident Evil as an exploration open world game is something that most people would enjoy. But let me know about what you think about it in the comments down below. How do you think Resident Evil's next evolution is going to be? Do you think Resident Evil is going to go back to the camera angles that nobody liked and the gameplay and the story that nobody liked, like the first generation of Resident Evil? Or do you think they're going to stick with what they did with Resident Evil 2 Remake? I personally would like to see at least one more evolution and one more take on every single way of Resident Evil before they go back and just settle for the Resident Evil 4 2 Remake style forever. I like the evolution that Resident Evil takes. I like that Capcom's not afraid to take chances with how they present these games. But I would like to know your opinion in the comments down below. And with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, try not to die, and I will see you in the next video.